we have been looking at the fact that Revelation, the great message, the great focus of Revelation is judgment. And this is a great key to understanding Revelation. It's about judgment. And as we pointed out, the target of the judgment is God. Even the judgment of human beings is to vindicate God's character. It's that the universe can see that God is fair. Everything is about answering Satan's accusations against God and proving that God is fair. And so the judgment itself is secondarily a judgment of people. It is primarily a judgment of God. And Revelation now is talking about the judgment of God, is focusing on the judgment of the kingdom of Christ, where God's government and God's wisdom are put on display. So Revelation 4 takes us into heaven, where we see the judgment of the kingdom. The kingdom of Christ is to be examined to see what has God been able to do through Christ in this kingdom. And so we see the 7 seals are an expression of the data that is presented in this judgment. The first 4 seals, the 4 horses, and they represent the history of the kingdom in the past. Then you come to seal number 5 with the souls under the altar, and it takes us into the present period of time, where you have the time of the judgment, and you have the sealing of the 144,000, and you have the finishing of the work, the final preaching of the message, all under that 5th seal. We saw that when the 6th seal is opened, there are terrific cosmic signs. Sun turned to darkness, the moon to blood, the heaven departed like a scroll, and it is ruled together. The stars fall, every mountain and island is moved, there's a great earthquake, and we see that this marks the introduction to the great day of God's wrath. You come to seal number 7, and when seal number 7 is opened, it is the end of probationary time. The angel throws down the censer, and the 7 angels with the trumpets prepare themselves to blow the trumpets. These trumpets represent still a part of the judgment of the kingdom, but now it is God's response to those who are apostates in the kingdom. This is represented in the parables of Jesus as the unfaithful servant being thrown into outer darkness, where there's weeping and wailing and there's gnashing of teeth. It's represented as the time when the wheat are separated from the tares, and the tares are put in the bundle for the burning. This is the 7 trumpets. It shows what happens to those who have professed to be Christians, but have really adopted the principles of Satan. The 7 trumpets, as we have pointed out, I don't know if we pointed out in this trip through Revelation, but last year, I remember, we pointed out that the 7 trumpets represent not God's active destruction, but the effect of God's passive attitude towards humanity. What do I mean by this? I mean that there are people who believe that the plagues, the trumpets, it's God saying, okay, my time to take vengeance. I'm going to torture you. I'm going to cause all of you to suffer terribly. And so he sends these terrible events upon people because he wants them to suffer. And the first thing is, not only is this contrary to the character of God, it's also something we can understand better when we understand that Revelation is a symbolic book. The things that God allows, he is presented as actively doing them. So when probation is closed, the Bible says God, the angel throws down the censer. The angel throws down the censer, and because the angel throws down the censer, it's the end of grace. And so what happens? There is an important statement that we find in Revelation 11. And in fact, I'm going to just read it. I'm going to read that statement from Revelation 11. Okay, so here we have the angel with the censer. But let me go to the Bible, and I want to look at Revelation 11 and just read this statement, because this statement it gives us a clue as to where those plagues and trumpets might come from. Revelation 11, and when the seventh angel blows his trumpet, look at what it is said. It says, verse 18, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come. God's wrath had arrived. Now it comes to the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great. And look what it says, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. I think that's a very strange statement, but it's also a very telling statement. I think what it is telling us is that the destruction of the earth that we see under those 7 trumpets is not God's work. I think it is a work of humanity. The Spirit of God has left the earth. The Spirit of God has been withdrawn from the earth, and the consequence is the madness that human beings have been carrying on. The lunacy, where they have manipulated nature, they have interfered with the weather, they have been doing all kinds of experiments, and taking the position that they understand everything so they can improve on nature. I believe that the 7 trumpets, 7 plagues, are the consequence of these types of lunatic actions. And so God refers to it here when God says the time has come to destroy those who destroy the earth. So I think these are the 7 trumpets. I think these are the consequence of the door of mercy being closed and the Spirit of God leaving the earth, and all that is left is the terrible events of Satan and crazy humanity released without the power of God, without the restraining power of the Spirit of God. I'll give you one other thing to consider. If you go back to Revelation chapter 7, it says in verse 2, I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, do not hurt the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So what this means is that, these angels represent, they are messengers, right? But if you look at Revelation in a very literalistic way, you would think that there are 4 angels sitting down east, west, north, and south, and they are holding back something with their hands. But we all know it's figurative, it's symbolic. What it means is that God is restraining the forces that would destroy the earth. And there are forces that are struggling to be released. The things that people are doing and the events that are happening on the planet are threatening to destroy the earth, to hurt the earth, the sea, and the trees. But God is holding it back. We can think of, recently we had, there was a series of 5 earthquakes recently. I haven't been paying much attention to it, but I think between last week or this week, there were 5 major earthquakes. One of them I know of in Venezuela. I haven't been in touch, but I know they said there were 5. And I know that people have been saying, they wonder if they were man-made, because they happened so quickly one behind the other in such close proximity that people are saying maybe they were man-made. I know when the hurricane hit Jamaica last year, Melissa, there was a lot of argument too about, whether or not it was a man-made thing. People are thinking like this these days because some of these things are so coincidental. My sister put up a notice to say that last year in where she lives, in her county, there are 6 counties around the county, she says that there was There was terrible flooding in her county, none of the others. And it happened twice. And this year, at the exact same day, it's happening again. Flooding that killed a couple of people. She says the same day, it's happening again. She also says that last year she saw 2 drones flying over and spending a lot of time over the area. So I'm not qualified to speak about those things, but I know that people are experimenting. My father said, a little old Jamaican man, he heard him saying one time, they've gone too far in a God business, which in Jamaican parlance means they have gone too far into God's prerogatives, God's business. And we know a lot of that is happening. Whatever we think, that's happening. So I think I interpret Revelation, the verses that we just looked at, to be saying, because of what has been happening, plus, because the earth has been on it has been internally deteriorating since the flood of Noah. Before Brother Ian speaks, I'm just going to say what I believe, right? God made the earth perfect at the beginning. Everything was in balance. Absolutely. The atmosphere, the water, everything was perfect. The weather, the climate, everything. In the time of Adam, when Adam and Eve sinned, a curse came upon the earth. We know. And some of the protection was taken away. It began to bear thorns and thistles, and animals became fierce and began to destroy one another. Everything became unsafe, much more unsafe. But men still continued to live to close to 1,000 years. In the time of the flood, something massive happened. And different people explain it differently. But what we know is that, I know not everybody believes that the earth is a globe, but what we can tell them, the explanations we have, is that the earth was tilted off balance. The earth originally probably was upright, straight up, and it was spinning in a uniform way. And because of the cover that surrounded the earth, the water canopy, the atmosphere was perfect. It was like a perfect hyperbaric chamber, if you know what those are. But when it was tilted off perpendicular, that's how you have the seasons, because it's spinning at an angle, and so one side is closer to the sun at different times of year. So when this happened, the result was terrific earthquakes that hit the planet. The result was extraordinary weather disruption. When the Bible talks about the windows of heaven were open and the fountains of the great deep were broken up, we don't have an adequate understanding of what went wrong at that time. Now, the earth itself would have been destroyed at that time had it not been that God restrained those forces of nature. And we know that these forces continue to be restrained by God. It says later on that in the days of Peleg, the earth was divided. So something else happened, something else major happened after the flood that split the earth. Maybe you had the division of the continents at that time. It's terrific when we understand what has been going on. And since that time, after the flood, the earthquakes and volcanic activity gradually died down, but the earth has never recovered. And as we come towards the close of the 6,000 years, that imbalance is beginning to show itself again. There are more earthquakes, more volcanic activity, more storms and hurricanes. And there is a statement that Ellen White made that I hold as accurate, where she says, the earth is breaking apart. The earth is breaking apart, and I believe it. If you look at Isaiah 24, it says that the earth is clean, broken down, the earth is dissolved. It says the earth it will be turned upside down, and it will reel to and fro like a drunkard. Isaiah 24. So the forces that restrain this planet, people don't understand that it is God's mercy. It is because grace is still available. Probation is still open. And so the Spirit of God is keeping humanity in a state of survival. But when every human being has made his decision, and the world in general has chosen to reject God, God will step aside. And I believe this is what we see when we see the seven plagues and the seven trumpets. Go ahead, Brother Ian.
I was thinking that when you said destroy those who destroy the earth, and I think about the seven last plagues, I realized that some of them couldn't be coming from man. But I think what you just said afterwards gonna help clear it up. I think some of them are just natural consequences of God removing His protection, not only from the
The voice
nature,
is very low, yeah.
not only from nature, but also from. Are you hearing me? Okay.
You're a little low, but you can go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I'm saying that not only from nature, the effects of nature on man, but I also believe supernatural power from the demons
I,
also have
I, I,
that
I,
too.
I agree. I don't think we can imagine what the close of probation will look like. We use a phrase trivially, but the close of probation means that God has withdrawn His protection. So what does Satan do? I mean, for the first time, it seems like he has no restraint. And what does nature do? The restraining power of God is withheld. And what do men do? The Spirit of God is no longer pleading with humanity. The only place in the planet where the Spirit of God remains is inside the hearts of God's people.
Yeah,
So,
because when you look at some of the plagues, like for example, the sun strike and darkness come upon the seat of the beast, and it affect, and man is gnawed with pain because of sores and stuff like that. You know that these things, yeah, the beast represents the world power at that point. So if that is happening to the beast, I don't think it's happened by another nation or by some other powers. I think it's probably coming supernaturally or by nature.
well, it may be. I mean, to be honest, there was a plan, a real plan, that Bill Gates had to block out the light of the sun, to mute the light of the sun. And I think he has changed his plan, but he was planning to, and it's not fake news. He was planning to spray something, some kind of crystal into the atmosphere to mask the sun's heat. And I think it seems like the plan has been, they have changed the plan or shelved it. Sister Susan said it has happened. I didn't know. I didn't know of that. I thought the plan had changed, but I know that that was something. And you have crazy people like that, and they have control of so much power. So yeah, you never. Some things will happen that are totally beyond where we think people would ever go. Brother Ray, go ahead.
Yes, Brother David. I just wonder, what do you think about it would look like? Because it's in Revelation and the studies that you are giving now. What is it going to look like when it says peace, peace, peace? Then sudden destruction. Does this mean that there will be a time of like an Ethiopia land kind of living, like everything is good, economy is good, there's no biasticity, all that stuff, and then
Um,
destruction comes?
yeah, it's hard to place the timing for that exactly, Brother Ray, and I'll tell you why. Because the Apostle Paul says this in Thessalonians. It's not in the prophetic books. It's like it's not in Revelation. It's not in the statement that Jesus made on the Mount in Matthew 24. It's something that Paul says like out of the blue. So, what does he mean? When does this happen? Because right now, we could be in a time when they were saying peace and safety. I mean, after World War One and World War Two, maybe that's when they were saying peace and safety. Maybe there's going to be peace between the US and Iran, and Russia and Ukraine, and then they will say peace and safety. I'm not sure exactly when, but I know that the main point behind what Paul is saying is that people will be looking at the world as it is in a condition of improvement. and they will be expecting that things are getting better. In some ways, people are thinking that way today with the development of AI and medical progress and so on. Maybe they are looking at it that there is peace and safety in that sense. So it's a little hard to know exactly what point Paul is talking about. But I would say that the world today is not as volatile as it has been at some times in the past. Like in World War II, that was war. We haven't gotten to that place again yet, so it's still a little up in the air exactly what he meant. Brother Matt, I don't know if you want to say something. You're unmuted. Okay, no.
Sorry.
It's okay, Brother Matt. All right, anyway, let's see if we can get to directly to the subject at hand this evening, Revelation. So last week we just looked briefly at these 7 trumpets, and I said something that I'm going to repeat. I've seen people try to interpret what each of these trumpets mean, and I honestly confess that I don't have ideas, okay? And because of that, I won't be looking at them in too much detail. It says that hail and fire mingled with blood fall upon the earth. What is that, and where does that come from? I mean, one thing we are pretty sure of is not literal blood, because where would all that blood come from? But it's something that looks like blood. Hail and fire. Now, is this figurative or is it literal? Some people think it's literal. I don't know, because look at what it says. It says that they fall upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up. Third part, all green grass was burnt up. Last week somebody was suggesting that maybe green grass means, I think Brother Jimmy was questioning whether green grass meant people, because there are some places in the Bible where grass, it says the people is like grass. But as I pointed out, it says that in some other place it mentions people being hurt in addition to grass. And I'll point out a few other places before I make my comments. When you go to the second one, it says that a great mountain burning with fire fell into the sea. If you take it literally, where does a mountain come from? It could be like some volcanic eruption. It could be like something that comes out of space, if you take it literally. The third one, it says that a great star fell upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and the name of the star was wormwood, and the rivers and waters became bitter like wormwood. The fourth one, something happens and 1/3 of the sun gets hit, 1/3 of the moon, 1/3 of the stars. And number 6, it says that when he opened, this is number 5, yeah. An angel came from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit. And when he opened the pit, there came out upon the earth locusts, and they had hair like women, teeth like lions, crowns on their heads. The sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots running into battle, and tails, and their power to hurt men 5 months. Some people have the idea that these locusts are really helicopters. So, different ideas, and I'm not going to venture. I know that everybody has an idea what these things might be. I'm not going to venture to make any suggestions on each one of these, because everything that we come up with will be speculation. If anybody has any clear idea, what we need is a pattern in how we interpret it. We need to say, okay, here's the principle, and then you apply the principle to all the trumpets. But if we can't do this, it doesn't make sense to pick out one thing and say, okay, this represents this, or this means this, and then the rest of the things we just are in limbo, because that way we're not operating from principle. We are just speculating because something catches our eye. So that's why I prefer to say, well, these trumpets have to do with after the end of probation. That much we are sure about. They have to do with when satanic forces and when human emotions and perversions are unleashed without reservation. They have to do with when the forces of nature are running loose without any restraint. That's what the the trumpets are, and they represent how these things affect especially apostate Christendom. Then, of course, when the sixth one is blown, it says the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates are loosed. And it says he heard the number of the army, and the number was 2 million. And some people believe that there's literally going to be an army of 2 million that goes out to kill people on the earth. So these are basically what the trumpets are. We're going to look at it from the Bible in a little bit more detail. But go ahead, Sister Susan.
Brother David, sorry if I've missed this at some point, but do we know what the time frame is for these trumpets?
Well, I am very much convinced, Sister Susan, that it will be after the close of probation. The angel throws down the censer, which is the close of probation. Then you have the trumpets. So I'm very much persuaded this is after the close of probation.
Okay, but what I mean by time frame is this going to go on for like a year? Is it going to happen for 6 months? These last plagues, or is it going to be like in a very short time? Boom, 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 boom.
I'm very sure it's going to be short. I'm very sure. But how short? How short is short? I don't know. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 months. The thing is, when you look at, I'm going to compare it to what Jesus said. Jesus said that there would be great tribulation, such as was not since there was a nation to that same until the end of time. Okay, and then he says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. So Jesus says there's going to be tribulation, then the falling of the stars, the moon, and so forth. And what we have seen is that the stars falling, the sun to darkness, the moon to blood, it marks the beginning of the plagues. Because when these things happen in Revelation 6, it says, the great day of God's wrath has arrived, and who will be able to stand? So when we see the sun turn to darkness, the moon to blood, and the stars are falling, this means it's the end of human probation. Now, Jesus says, after this, the sign of the Son of Man shall appear in the heavens, and we will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Jesus does not mention the plagues. What are we to understand from this? Well, what I understand is that it means that the plagues will be very short. Not even worth mentioning when Jesus gave that great discourse. He says the tribulation, then the signs that mark the end of probation, then Jesus comes. So, in between those signs and the coming of Jesus is the plagues. But Jesus doesn't mention it because it's so short. And if you look at the parables of Jesus, it always talks about the unfaithful servant being thrown into outer darkness, where there's weeping and wailing of gnashing of teeth. So it's a short period of time. And while I wouldn't put a date on it, I don't think God is going to allow it to continue for a long time. Because first of all, God is not into torturing people. People have made their decisions. His people are in the planet. And He's eager. As we are eager to go home, He's eager to have us come home. So I don't think He's going to wait any long time. I think the plagues are simply His statement to show to the universe what happens when you reject God. You wanted to be without God. I'm giving you what you wanted. That's what He's saying. But how long? Just enough to create what happens in a planet where God has been rejected. So the result will be disastrous, but I don't think God will allow it to continue for long. So that's the best answer that I could give. Maybe I don't know if anybody else has a better answer, but that's my best answer. Brother Tony, go ahead.
Okay, so where does the persecution and killing of Christians come in? Because I know it's happening in some parts of the world, but it's not really in America.
Okay, I should really have charts on the screen where I could illustrate this. But, your question takes us back a little bit. But, okay, let's go back.
Well, that's okay then.
No, let me go ahead, Brother Tony. Let me go ahead. I probably can illustrate it using my fingers. We know that there are 7 seals, right? Seal number 7, the last of them is the trumpets. Where does the persecution of Christians take place? It takes us back to seal number 5. Remember the seals. Seal number 1, the white horse. Number 2, the red horse. Number 3, the black horse. Number 4, the white horse. Seal number 5 is the souls under the altar. And remember, they were told to rest a little bit because some of their fellow servants are going to be killed. So this happens under seal number 5. When you come
Gotcha.
to seal number 6, it's the close of probation, it's the end of grace. By this time, the persecution of God's people is over. Who to die will be dead. Who is to be perfected will be perfected. Now it's the end of probation, and now you have seal number 7, which is the 7 trumpets. By this time, the persecution of God's people is over. Now it's time for the world to reap what they sowed.
Amen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Brother Tony. Brother Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, so how do you fit Revelation 11:8? I was reading it since this week, and I was looking at it with the witnesses when they testified and then they die. That point there, how you overlay that on top of all of this?
All right, I need to go back a little bit in my charts. Okay, so let me use, okay. So this is what we have. We have trumpet number 1, 2. Number 1 is when the hail and fire fall upon the earth, right? Number 2 is when the great mountain burning with fire falls into the sea. Number 3 is when the great star falls upon the rivers and fountains of waters and they turn to wormwood. Number 4 is when there is darkness, the sun and the moon and the stars are smitten. Number 5 is when the bottomless pit is opened. Number 6 is when the 4 angels bound in the river Euphrates are released. Then you have number 7, but no, you don't. God stops at number 6 and he takes us to the 2 witnesses and the little book and all of that. And then he has number 7. So as I pointed out, these 2 witnesses do not belong here. Where do they belong? They actually belong under seal number 5. These 2 witnesses and the work of the witnesses is seal number 5, the same seal where you have martyrs, the same seal where white robes are given to the souls under the altar. The judgment of the church past, what they would call the judgment of the dead and the judgment of the living, happened under seal number 5. The 7 trumpets are off. There's really no gap between the trumpets. No gap. But God puts a gap in there because he wants us to, at trumpet number 6, something is about to happen with trumpet number 7. Something tremendous is about to happen. And so God tells us about the 2 witnesses because they are the key to what happens under trumpet number 7, which is what I have in mind to talk about this evening. But I don't know if that's a quick answer to your question, because if it is, we can proceed.
Let's hope you will deal with it then. Yeah, I was thinking about the dying on the resurrection, coming back to life of the witnesses.
All right, just bear in mind.
Yeah, but I understand that they're not in tandem with the trumpets actually before. I know that part.
Yeah, and bear in mind that the witnesses are not, doesn't mean that people die.
I know. I'm just trying to, I understand it.
Right. So the death of the 2
but I just want to make sure my idea is right.
Yeah, the death of the 2 witnesses is a close of probation.
Right.
So you have that right. The resurrection of the 2 witnesses is when the prophecies and the events that the Word of God has stated begin to come to pass. That's when they come back to life, because now the Word of God is effective again, not to convert people, but to convict them that the Word is true. So in that sense, they come back to life.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Thank you. Sister Susan sparked a thought in my mind from when she was talking about the timeline for the plagues, because I know there's a verse in chapter 9 which talks about those creatures come out of the abyss and they had the power to torture people, the wicked, for 5 months. So I'm just looking at that, and that was after the 5th trumpet, or maybe it was the 5th trumpet, which the parallel verse for in Revelation 16, because I know Revelation 16, we talked about this, is parallel to the chapters in Revelation 8. So I was just thinking that even though we don't understand the description given in Revelation 9 of the locusts and the creatures, there's a little bit more information in chapter 16 about each plague.
Yes, the plagues in Revelation 16, the main way in which they correspond is the way they affect the area of the earth where they affect. Plague 1, trumpet 1 affects the earth. Plague 2, trumpet 2 affects the sea. Plague 3, trumpet 3 affects the rivers and fountains of waters. Plague 4, trumpet 4 affects the heavenly bodies. Plague 5, there's darkness. In the case of the trumpets, the bottomless pit is open and there comes up smoke that darkens the earth. In the case of the plagues, darkness is in the kingdom of the beast. Plague 6, the river Euphrates is dried up. Trumpet 6, the 4 angels that are tied up in the river Euphrates are released. So they affect the same areas of the earth and they are similar. But they are different in several ways. And that is because I think they are being described in the effect they have upon two different groups of people. Remember that the last
Right.
part of Revelation is looking at the judgment of the kingdom of the beast, while the first part is looking at the judgment of the kingdom of Christ, those who claim to be
Right.
Christians.
Right.
So,
It's how they affect the different classes, the different people, groups of people, but they're the same event,
yes,
right? Yeah. And it said for 5 months.
yes,
I think that's why she said that. How long was the duration of each plague and so forth. And I know the Bible doesn't say, but it's that one verse that says for 5 months that they would not die and that they would have to suffer for 5 months. I don't know what that 5 months
yes.
means. I guess we'll get to it.
Let me go to the Bible and read, and then I'm going to try to illustrate what the Bible says. So we go to Revelation 8. That's where we have these. Now, I want to point out a couple of things. We're looking at the angels, and it says the third part of trees was burnt up. Then for the second angel, with this great mountain burning with fire, the third part of the sea became blood. The third part of the creatures died. The third part of the ships were destroyed. Number 3, the third angel sounded, verse 10, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. It fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. You go down to the fourth one. The fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day did not shine for a third part of it, and the night likewise. This third part, God is saying something. I don't know exactly what it means, but I'm absolutely certain that it means something. When it says the third part of the sun was smitten, what does that mean? Does it mean that a third of the sun disappears, like you bite out a piece out of it, and then a third part of the moon? And what does it mean? It says the third part of the stars. You gather them in a clump and pick out 1/3 of them, but it goes on to say that the day did not shine for a third. So
Yeah,
what
it
does it
means
mean?
something.
Right.
Third means something. Yeah. It even says in the parallel chapter in 16, it says that all the creatures in the earth, in the sea died. I think it says instead of a third in chapter 8.
Right. So
So
we'll get
different.
in just a moment.
different.
But what I have thought about, there are verses, well, there's at least one passage in the Bible where God talks about the way he's going to deal with Israel, and he says he will take a third of them through this, and a third of them through this, and a third of them through that. And it's like he divides up Israel into parts. And he mentions what will happen to a third and what will happen to a third. So, just off the top of my head, because I need to look at this more closely. And I have to admit that I haven't done it. But I'm going to throw out an idea that I will have to follow up on this idea. The third part, everything is being affected. These trumpet plagues are affecting thirds. It means that 2/3 are not being affected. And since I'm saying this, I should look for I should look for the verse that I'm talking about, because it will give us an idea of what I'm trying to say. I think it's in Hosea or Joel or one of them. All right, I need to take some time and look at it. But I'm coming to you, Brother Jimmy. It's probably in Ezekiel. God is talking about the way He's going to punish Israel. He's going to punish apostate Israel. And He says in Ezekiel 5 and verse 2, Thou son of man, take thee a sharp knife, take thee a barber's razor, cause it to pass upon thine head and upon thy beard. Then take thee balances to weigh and divide the hair. Thou shalt burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city, when the days of the siege are fulfilled. And thou shalt take a third part and smite about it with a knife, and a third part thou shalt scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them. So God told Ezekiel to cut off his hair and his beard, his head and his beard, and he was going to divide the hair into 3 parts, and he was going to apply 3 ways, 3 destructions to the hair. Some 1/3 gets burned with fire, 1/3 gets cut up with a knife, and the third part is scattered in the wind. And it was an illustration of what God was going to do to Israel, apostate Israel. So these thirds, at least in this passage, are associated with God's punishment upon apostates. So I think it has something to do with what we are seeing there in Revelation. Let me see. See, here it is again in Ezekiel 5 and verse 12. God says, A third part of thee shall die with the pestilence, and with famine shall they be consumed in the midst of thee. And a third part shall fall by the sword round about thee. And I will scatter a third part into all the winds, and I will draw out a sword after them. So, for whatever reason, God splits His punishment upon apostate Israel into thirds. I don't know if it means exactly mathematically third, like you measure and say, okay, you have 300 people, this will happen to 100, this will happen to 100, this will happen to 100. I don't think so. I think what God is saying is that 3 kinds of disaster will follow you. Some are going to die by pestilence, some by fire. Some of you are going to die by the sword, and some are going to be scattered. So 3 kinds of punishment, I think. So we can look at Revelation where it talks about the trumpets, and it further strengthens the idea of what we are saying, that these trumpets represents God's punishment against apostate believers, apostate Christendom, those who claim to be God's people. And so the different disasters that he mentioned in Ezekiel, you have them coming again in Revelation 11, but more of them, Revelation 8 and 9, more of them. But to make us know that it's dealing with apostates, God mentions it as thirds, because thirds are associated with punishment against apostates. Okay? As I said, I need to look into it more closely, but that's one general idea that I have that I'm leaning towards. Brother Jimmy, go ahead.
Yes, Brother Clayton, I agree with you, because when the dragon draw a third part of the stars from heaven too, it seemed like it's Satan's kingdom, that those tares that were sown among the wheat are really being judged.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. when it says that his tail drew a third part of the stars, I always wonder if it means that there were 300 billion and Satan took 100 billion.
Yeah.
Or is it just a generalized statement? Because the third, I think the third, I'm thinking that the third means it's referring to beings that once were loyal to God and have turned away from Him. And so God refers to them as thirds.
Yeah.
So that would fit in with what Satan did. He drew a third of the angels from heaven who were once God's people but went into apostasy. And maybe it would explain the same thing here in Revelation 8 and 9. These trumpets are punishments upon people who were once God's people but have become apostates, or they professed to be God's people. That's why God speaks of the punishments that's coming in thirds. It's focused especially on apostates. So that's what
And I see you put all the scriptures and it corresponds with everything.
All right, Brother Jim.
Okay.
Yes. So let me continue now, and of course I'm going to miss out some of this, skip out some of it, because like I say, I dare not go into the trumpets in detail because I would be pretending that I understand them, and I don't. I understand a little, but not a lot. All right.
Brother David, I don't see the body hand up, but I also, this brought me to the next point, similar to the question I asked regarding the two witnesses. And I have an idea, just want to make sure that I'm thinking it correctly. But I was thinking about the 7 last plagues, which we know are the same events, and where Babylon falls in it, because right after they begin to speak about Babylon, chapter 17 and 18, begin to talk about Babylon and all what happened with Babylon riding up on the beast and so forth. So it is a flashback again, taking us back to from the days of the kingdom right up to the point when Babylon is being destroyed. And it seemed to overlay somewhere into the plagues. I don't know
Yes,
if I'm
same period, because it says in one day her plagues have come. And
so now that
that
you're talking about this third and the apostate people who have turned away from God, and we know what Babylon represents. I don't know how maybe that fits into it somewhere there.
yeah, although I think in Revelation, when you look at the trumpets, it's talking about God's punishments upon individuals and groups. But when you talk about the judgment of Babylon, God is looking on the entire system as a complete entity, represented as one woman. So
Okay.
I think that's the difference in how God presents it in chapter 8 and 9 versus chapter 18.
Okay.
But let's see if we can, the time is almost gone. Let's see if we can make some progress here. I wanted to take us a little time to look at what is said next in verse 13. Now it says the fourth angel, verse 12 says the fourth angel sounded, third part of the sun was smitten, the third part of the moon, third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it likewise. And I beheld an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. Now I need to, let me put an image on the screen. All right, let me go to this. Here you have, we have looked at these four. Number 4 is that the earth was dark and the sun was dark, and one third, one third, one third. Now, at this point, an angel flies through the midst of heaven. At this point, after number 4, and he says, Woe, woe, woe. As a matter of fact, I should do them in a different way. Let me just do it differently. He says, Woe, woe, woe. I changed the position of the woe because actually he's saying that the 3 trumpets that remain are, each one is a woe. So these 4 trumpets, the first 4 were not woes, but these 3 are woes. And he's saying, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the sea by reason of the other, and the earth, by reason of the other 3 trumpets which are yet to sound. So it seems that the remaining 3 trumpets would be more devastating than the first 4. At least it would be for the people of earth. Now you're going to see that they are not all terrible. I mean, as far as God's people are concerned, they are not terrible, because when you come to number 7, it says that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our God. So that is not a woe for us. That is great rejoicing. So this shows you that we are looking at these woes as affecting the apostate world. For them, the coming of Jesus is the most terrible event in the history of the planet. All the plagues and the punishment that went on is like nothing compared to the coming of Jesus. That is a great disaster for them. And that is why these last 3, they are woes for the apostate world, but they are not woes for God's people. So, the angel flies through the midst of heaven and he says, woe, 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 by the reason of these 3 trumpets, the 3 angels which are yet to sound. So, the 5th angel sounds, and I saw a star fall from heaven onto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And I'm going to comment on the bottomless pit. Okay? I was listening to a presentation recently, and it reminded me that there are so many different interpretations of this bottomless pit, but a lot of them are not really based on biblical, what the Bible says. And so, let me remind us. Sorry, I don't have my things sorted out properly here this evening, but we'll jump from place to place. Alright, so the bottomless pit. I have an illustration here of the bottomless pit. And the point of this illustration is because I want to make graphic what the Bible is saying. Now, in actual fact, the biblical word is, in the Greek, is abyssos, which means the abyss. But the meaning is really a pit that has no bottom. Now, this illustration is to help us to think, what happens if a person falls into a pit that has no bottom? And the obvious answer is that this person has absolutely no hope of ever getting out. If you were to land, you might break your feet, your arm, you might break everything. But there's hope that you can get out if there's a bottom. But a bottomless pit really implies that there's no hope of ever getting out. So when it says that the angel, this angel of the bottomless pit, or the star, is given the key of the bottomless pit, and he opens the bottomless pit, God is giving us a further indication of where we are in time. We are in a condition where there is no hope. There's no hope for the world. The angel has already thrown down the sense that there's no hope. Nobody else will ever change. Now, you know that it is not God who brought this condition. It's people who brought this condition because they rejected the Spirit of God so consistently, so persistently, until God departed. But the earth at this time is in this condition. It's in the condition of the bottomless pit. So all of this, when you say the angel is given the key to the bottomless pit, all of this is figurative language. It's like you see in Revelation 20 where it says that an angel came down from heaven having a great chain, and he had the key, and he chained Satan and bound him and threw him into the bottomless pit. I hope nobody believes that anybody is going to tie up Satan and throw him into any hole. It's figurative. God is using imagery to teach us about spiritual conditions. That's one of the keys to understanding Revelation. He uses physical imagery to represent spiritual states or conditions. And that's one of the great keys to understanding Revelation that a lot of people miss. So, the key to the bottomless pit means that this condition, whatever this star is, and probably this star represents Satan, right? Whatever this star is, he is the one who is able to open the bottomless pit, because he brought about these conditions where the Spirit of God was no longer able to reach anybody. So it's like he opened this bottomless pit. He opened these conditions of hopelessness upon the earth. And out of this hopeless condition, there comes a smoke or a consequence of this, and the sun and the air are darkened by reason of the smoke. Consequences, like when Sodom was burning and there went up the smoke of the fire. The smoke went up like a furnace. Now it says there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And this is why I'm a little skeptical. I read where people say this represents helicopters, because it says they are commanded to not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only the men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. Now it says the reason why people say it could be helicopters, because the description here sounds like helicopters, right? The locusts look like horses prepared to battle. Well, I don't know if that fits helicopters. And their heads were crowns like gold. They say that is the insignia on the helicopter. I don't know if that makes sense. Their faces were as the faces of men. I don't see how that makes sense. They had hair like women. I don't know how that fits helicopters. Their teeth were like the teeth of lions. I don't understand that fitting helicopters either. They had breastplates like iron. Well, that could be helicopters. They are covered with iron. The sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. That could be the noise from the propellers. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. They say maybe they had a soldier sitting in the back with a gun, a machine gun, and he was firing from the back. But I mean, it's kind of stretching it. And furthermore, it is out of sync with the rest of the passage, because if you are going to take that literally, then what it means is that you are going to take literally the key of the bottomless pit, some kind of key, and the bottomless pit, he opens a door and smoke comes out. If you're going to be literal, then you need to be literal. And the smoke like a furnace, you have to literalize everything. If you are going to say, this is what this means, then everything has to mean something similar. You can't take a piece of it and say, this is kind of figurative and this is literal. So that's one of the problems. But what I wanted to point out is that it is clear that this is after the close of probation. Look at what it says. It was commanded then that you should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing nor any tree. The only thing they are to hurt, only those men who have not the seal of God in their forehead. So when is this? This is after God's people have been sealed. The 144,000 is on the earth and they have the seal of God. They are not to be hurt. But everybody else is to be hurt. So this is clear. You know, it was interesting that even when I read, many years ago, I read Uriah Smith, Daniel and the Revelation. And when I saw those men who have not the seal of God, you know what Uriah Smith said? I think it's Uriah Smith. Yeah, I don't remember well. It was a long time ago that I read through, I was studying that book. But he says that there were people back there in those days, because Uriah Smith says the trumpets were back in the days of the Muslim invasions of Europe, back in the 5th century and the 6th century and those times. So where does the seal of God come from back in that time? He said it was because people back then were keeping the Sabbath. So these Muslim invaders were not allowed to hurt the people who were keeping the Sabbath, but only the rest of Christendom. And that's how he explained it. And I think that's still how Adventists explain it. Because it is clear you are completely distorting the meaning of Revelation, because in the book of Revelation, it is clear the only people in the entire book of Revelation who is sealed is the 144,000. Nobody else. The only people who have the seal of God are the 144,000. So when it says that these locusts, whatever they are, they have the power to hurt, but not to hurt those who have the seal of God, it is clearly saying that it is a time when the 144,000 have been sealed, and these terrors, whatever they are not allowed to hurt the sealed people of God. So it's clearly after the time of the sealing that you have the trumpets. So it reinforces the truth that these are the plagues taking place after the sealing. It was given to them that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented for 5 months. And this reminds me of Sister Suzanne's question. So is this saying that one of these will last for 5 months, one of these trumpet plagues? Because it mentions a time of 5 months. And it says, in those days, men shall seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. I'm not going to go into detail, like I said, because I don't understand. But there's one thing I would like us to consider when it talks about 5 months. Some of these times I would like us to consider that they may not specifically be telling us about numerical time value. All right, I'm not going to dwell on that this evening, but it's just something to consider. For example, if you read about a time of 3.5 years, it might be pointing you to the ministry of Jesus. It might be saying that these people are replicating the ministry of Jesus. So the time period is used to make you point you to the ministry of Jesus rather than to the time itself. Maybe I shouldn't even have said that because it opens a can of worms. But anyway, I'm just saying it because I'm saying that until we understand these trumpets better, which we may not understand until the time comes, but until we understand them better, for me, everything is in kind of suspension. I'm not going to say it's literal 5 months. I'm not going to say it's not literally 5 months. I'm just going to say I'm not sure. Now, let's get down to the things that we are certain about. Now it talks about the locusts, and again we are in uncertain territory. They had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. Surely that must be Satan, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue his name is Apollyon. Apollyon means the destroyer, and it's the same thing in the Hebrew. So if this is the angel of the bottomless pit, it's the angel or the messenger who supervises this condition of hopelessness, where there's no Holy Spirit. I mean, I can't think of anybody who is more perfectly fit for this description but Satan. But then it says earlier on that a star came down from heaven that opened the pit. So what is that star if it's not Satan? So little things there that we need to consider more. But what I want to point to is this. Verse 12, one woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. So the first woe is the opening of the bottomless pit. So apparently this trumpet is more terrible than the 4 that went before. And it says there are 2 more to come. So number 6 is that the 6th angel, the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates are released. Now when people look at this, they say that a lot of people have their eyes on Turkey. I've been listening to some of these interpretations, and they say that Turkey is going to attack Israel, and that the river Euphrates represents Turkey, and they expect that Turkey is going to be overthrown because it mentions the great river Euphrates. So they say the great river Euphrates means Turkey. I don't know why they say the river means Turkey, but I'm going to give at least what I think is a better explanation for this particular one. It says, and the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, to kill the 3rd part of men. And again, the third part, you have to believe it has to do with apostate Christianity. There comes that 3rd again. It says the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. I think that's about 2 million. I heard the number of them, and it describes what the horses look like. And again, if you say the locusts were helicopters, what are these horses? Because horses are not used to fight war in these days. The horses were like the heads of lions. Out of their mouth there came fire and smoke and brimstone, And Uriah Smith said these were the Turkish invaders, the Muslim invaders, and the fire and brimstone coming out of their mouth is because they were firing guns, and John didn't know guns and gunpowder, so he was describing it like fire and brimstone. By these three was the third part of men killed. Again, the third part. And again, I think it means apostate Christendom. By the fire, by the smoke, and the brimstone which came out of their mouths. But then it says their power is in their mouth and in their tails. Why the tail? For the tails were like unto serpents, and they had heads, and with them they do hurt. Now it straight out describes these as plagues, because it says the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues yet repented not of their works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver, brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. So the point of what God is saying here is that no matter what happens to people in these days, nobody repents. And the point is that there is no change for humanity after this point. Probation is truly closed. Men have truly locked their hearts to the work of the Spirit of God, and God's Spirit has departed. So nobody repents. So no matter how terrible things are, no matter how many demons are released or whatever, nobody changes. Now, this is the second woe. And again, I won't try to interpret what this second woe is. But the next thing we are going to expect is the third woe. This is the end of woe number 2. So we are going to expect woe number 3. Where do we find woe number 3? We are here in chapter 9. So we are looking for woe number 3 in chapter 10, but we don't find woe number 3. You know where we find woe number 3? You have to go all the way over to chapter 11. And if you go to chapter 11, you find a statement here that is a little strange. And it says in chapter 11 and verse 14, way over chapter 11 and verse 14, it says the second woe is past. Where did the second woe pass? We're in chapter 11. You have to go way back to chapter 9. And at the end of chapter 9, you find the end of woe number 2. They did not repent of their murders, their sorceries, their immorality, nor of their thefts. You go all the way to chapter 11, and it says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Now look at this word quickly. The word quickly means that immediately one thing is over, the next one follows. Immediately, woe number 2 passes, second woe. Immediately, you are looking for woe number 3. But instead of woe number 3, what do you see when you go to the next chapter? You go to chapter 10, and what do you see? Yeah, how did I get here? Chapter 10. Instead of seeing woe number 3, John sees an angel coming down with a little book in his hand. That's going to be our subject for next week. But I want to make the point that this is not supposed to be here. This chapter is not supposed to be here. What is supposed to be here is woe number 3. What is supposed to be here is woe number 3. Because woe number 2 was finished in chapter 9. Second woe is past. And you are looking for the third woe to come quickly. Quickly. We marked it. Quickly. Right? But it doesn't come quickly. Instead, you see chapter 10 and the angel coming down with a little book. What this word is telling us, this word quickly, God is telling us that there is no gap between woe number 2 and woe number 3. Woe number 3 comes quickly, follows rapidly behind number 2. So where does chapter 10 come in? Chapter 10 is an insertion. God dropped something in at that point that does not belong at that point, but God put it at that point. Because there's a point that God wants to make, and He puts in this thing at this place. Now, I have to take a little bit more time and look at this in the future. But let me see if I can. So this is what we just pointed out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's woe number 1. 6. That's woe number 2. And then you should have woe number 7. But instead, God puts in the 2 witnesses. But they don't belong here. There's no gap between 6 and 7. 7 follows quickly behind 6. So these do not belong here. But there's a reason why God puts them there. There's a reason. And to understand that reason properly, we probably have to take the time next week to look at it closely. So, what we see is that we have woe number 1. That's trumpet number 5. Woe number 2. That's trumpet number 6. Woe number 3. Trumpet number 7. No gap. No, I got it messed up. Sorry. These are the first 4 trumpets. Okay, I don't even understand my own graphic. But then you come to the next 3. The 3 woes. 5, 6, and 7. All right? And after 6, the second woe. Then you have 7, the third woe. But instead of that, in between, you have the opening of the little book. God drops this in between woe number 2 and woe number 3. The narrative, it's there, but in actual fact, in real life, there's no gap. And this is one of the big problems people have with the trumpets, because they are reading the trumpets as though everything follows in sequence. So when they come to the trumpet number 6, which is the second woe, they say something big happens in between, which is the opening of the little book and the ministry of the 2 witnesses. And so they say these trumpets have to be in the past, because you have to have a place to put the opening of the book and the ministry of the 2 witnesses. But in actual fact, what happens is that this is an insertion. God puts it in here. It doesn't actually belong at this place. The 7 trumpets follow in straight sequence. And chapter 10 and 11a, first part of 11, does not belong here in sequence. But God puts it here for a reason. And that's I think that's where we're going to go. I won't even try to look at this chart this evening, because honestly, I think I've just about come to the end of what I have to give this evening. So we'll have to look at that next week. But Brother Kip, go ahead.
I got a couple things. The first one is, so that's like watching a movie, and then in the middle of the movie, you're watching it, and then it says 3 years ago.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
3 years earlier or something like that, right? That's what you're getting at.
Mm-hmm.
And then, is that it? That's what you're getting at?
Yes, and usually when you're reading a book or you're watching a movie and they take you back into the past, it's because you come to a point in the movie where if you are not taken back into the past, you won't understand what is about to follow. So they stop the movie,
Right.
or they stop the book, and they take you to a previous event that is going to help you to understand what is about to happen now. It's a method
Right.
of creating drama and helping people to understand things. And God uses that method. We have seen it before in Revelation, and it's also what is happening here. Yeah, Brother Kip, go ahead.
Right. Right. And so, okay, so my second one is, where are the fallen angels at now? We we know they're on Earth, but where are they?
Well, the
Are
best, my
they? Because I've
understanding,
heard people say,
yeah,
go
the best
ahead.
understanding I can give is by using the word dimensions, right? I don't think they are in a literal pit. I don't think they are in any physical place, but I would say they are in a certain dimension. You know that this our world is made up of, as best as we know, 3 dimensions, right? Length, width, depth, and anyway, but there is a suggestion that there may be other dimensions, other areas of existence. Now, the spiritual world, for example, it's a different dimension, because in the spiritual world you can walk through these walls. You can perhaps move from one place to another in an instant of time, where you can't do it physically. We don't understand all that can happen in the spiritual world, but we say it's another dimension. What I understand is that God has blocked spirits from entering the physical dimension. They can exist in the same space. They can be in the room where we are. They can be all around us, but they are not interacting with the physical because they exist in a different dimension. So when it says that the evil angels are in the deep or in the pit, it's not a physical pit. It's a spiritual space where they are not allowed to cross the barrier to get out of it. So that's my understanding. So they can be right here, they can be all around us, but they are unable to interact or touch or interfere with us because they are locked up in this dimension. And this is why it helps us to understand why evil spirits are so anxious to get a body that they can possess. Because when you get into a body, you are able to interact in the physical world. So if they can find a human being who is open enough to them that they can possess that body, it gives them a room into the physical world where they can begin to now interact and relate and to do things like people, as long as they possess that body. And if they are cast out, they want to find another body that they can do the same thing with. But if there's no other body for them to get into, they have to return to that state where they might have to remain for the rest of their existence, because getting into the physical world is a rarity for a spirit.
Okay, because I once heard that that they were all basically in somebody's body. Somebody's body is where they all were, but or not just one person, but you know, each fallen angel had a body that they was occupying. That's what I once heard, but I didn't,
Right.
I didn't believe that. But I just all right. So once you come to Christ, once a person comes to Christ, even in that other dimension, are they allowed to be around you?
Are they allowed to be around you?
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, they were always around Christ. They tempted him. They were always trying to find a way to get other people to do some harm to him. So I think they're around us. But, I mean, when you're a Christian, they can't get into you. But I would imagine that they're all around you, all around me, trying to get people to they can't hurt us physically because they are locked away. But I think in some way they can use mental powers to affect people, so they might get people to annoy you, to upset you. And if they can stir up a mob to stone you, they will absolutely do it. So I think in that way they can affect Christians, Sister Lorena, go ahead.
This is a very interesting topic. I'm always wanting to know more about that. That's interesting. You're saying that they're in another realm and they cannot physically interact with us, but they can affect our thinking though, even though they're in that realm. I mean, they can give us thoughts.
I think telepathy, what they call telepathy, is not fiction. It's just that human beings make more of it, as far as we are concerned, than we. Like, for example, we think that, well, I don't know if it can or cannot happen that a person can send his thoughts to another person's mind. I don't think it can happen normally. But I think the idea that somebody can place a thought in your mind, somebody who has greater mental powers, is not far-fetched. It's not far-fetched. And I certainly know that evil spirits, they have this kind of ability to lead you to think a certain way. And it's not just by intruding a thought into your mind. They do it by bringing things before your eyes. Okay, you see something on the road, you see something on television. There are ways in which they can intrude into your thinking, not just through maybe in telepathic ways. I mean, if evil spirits didn't have this power, they wouldn't have any way to try to tempt us. They wouldn't have any way to try to affect us, because one thing we are certain of is that they don't have the power to physically hurt us, because if they did, all of us would be dead. But there has never been one single case. I've looked for it. There's never been one single case of an evil spirit actually killing somebody. I don't know, maybe the people who are deep into spiritualism, It might have happened. But what they will do is get other people to kill you. They'll get somebody to stone you or to chop you or to stab you or to do something. But evil spirits have not been given the power to physically hurt human beings. When Satan set out to destroy Job, God gave him permission. And look, he didn't put his hand on Job. What did he do? He stirred up the Sabaeans. He brought a wind that fell upon their house, some hurricane or something. He couldn't actually put his hands upon them and strangle them or choke them or something. God doesn't give evil spirits that kind of power. They have to stay in their realm. So one thing we don't need to be afraid of where spirits are concerned is of being physically hurt. They try to get to us through influencing how things happen in the physical world.
Okay, thank you for that. So when Revelation 18:2 says, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. What are they talking about, those spirits?
Well, it may be that in Babylon at that time there's a great deal of spiritual possession. It may be because you open yourself up to Satan, eventually you're going to get possessed by an evil spirit if you keep opening up yourself to Satan. But I think we don't even need to look that deep. The influences that control and determine how Babylon is going about things are satanic. If Satan wants to find a home in religion, Babylon is where he finds it. In other words, the spirit that drives Babylon, the ideas, the principles, the way they go about things are Satan's principles. And so in that way, every evil spirit finds himself comfortable in that kind of atmosphere. So I would interpret it at the very least in that way. But I'm not discounting the possibility that it might mean that many of them are demon possessed at that point in time. Actual demon possession. Because that's what happens when people sell themselves to evil ideas and to the influence of evil of satanic forces.
But on the other side, do we have each an angel protecting us?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say more than that, we have the Spirit of God dwelling inside of us.
Okay.
So that's an impossibility for Satan to come in where Christ is.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Was your hand up, Brother Keith? Sister Anita, I think, and then maybe her hand went down.
Yeah, I put mine back down.
All right. Sister Di, go ahead.
So I'm thinking in the Spirit of the Lord in Revelation 18, and that's obviously the close of probation. And the Spirit of the Lord is withdrawn from the earth, means no longer wooing those who have not accepted him. They're left to their own devices, which means they're in a state of where they were born in Adam, but now it's magnified the evil that's in them. And because they rejected God, he turns them over
to themselves,
which means they open up themselves to the evil because that's where they're attracted anyway, because they have constantly rejected the Spirit of the Lord. They've put themselves in a position where they can open themselves up to the evil, and then chaos ensues because of their being. See, it's no longer just oppression at that time. It could be possession in that time because of this constant rejection that they have made to the Spirit of God.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're in a position where they're opening up themselves. See, some people today who outright go to give themselves over to the devil for fame and fortune. That's not everybody that's in the world. Some people are just in their natural state of being in Adam, and they behave as such. Mm-hmm. But the Spirit has still the ability to woo them, and if there's somebody interceding for them or something, there can be an opening where they can end up responding. And if their hearts are honest, they do. And they cross over into kingdom in the new birth, like most of us, you know. Uh, we went from Adam to the kingdom of the second Adam. So when it says the spirit of the Lord is withdrawn from the earth, we become the light that remains in this dark world, and they can't stand the light. So they really are enraged, you know. So when the chaos ensues and everybody's in madness, it just made me think of what happened the night of Christ's crucifixion, when at one point a few days ago the people were saying Hosanna, and now these same people are now stirred up to say crucify him. So there are people that in the crowd that probably were possessed or had given themselves over, which influenced those who had not surrendered their life to Christ. So they're really influenced now with the goings on of the devils that's, you know, going on around them, and they get caught up with that. But in the last days, if there's no spirit to woo those people because of their continual rejection, they're just turned over. He says, if you don't love the truth, he'll turn you over to believe a lie. And so everything now, they don't have a discernment between, they just reject the light, but they don't have a discernment of truth anymore because they have continually rejected it. And so now they believe the lie and they're caught up with him and whatever. So is that like a good representation of what happens?
Yeah, I am not going to disagree. Yes, I pretty much agree.
All right.
All right, Sister, thank you. Um, all right, so I see that there's a little bit of a war going on in the chat. All right, let me just respond quickly, and then I'm going to close off. But I think Sister Talia had a question, which is, I think she has asked this question before, but let me read it, and then I will respond. If we are speculating, by what authority is it allowed to move around and chapters in the last book of the Bible or misinterpret scripture? All right. So let me see if I understand the question correctly. The question is, who gives people like me, any one of us for that matter, the authority to switch these events from place to place? And I'm going to answer as I understand it. I can't answer any other way. The book of Revelation is a book of it's deliberately written in such a way to confuse people. God gave it to us in language and in a style that is not easy to understand. And there's a reason, because Jesus said he told parables so that people who that hearing them might hear and not understand. He deliberately couched some of his revelations in difficult language because it's not for the careless person. Who gives us the right that when we see a beast, we say it's a kingdom? Who gives us the right that when we see a woman, we say it's a church? Where do we get that from? When we come to Revelation, we are constantly trying to look for clues as to how we interpret what we are seeing. When we take one event in this place and we move it to somewhere else, we are simply applying that rule of trying to look to see how we can make sense of what is happening. Who gives us the authority? God gives every student of the Bible that authority to look at it and see if you can find the best understanding. There are places in Revelation where this happens and we don't have a problem. For example, the judgment of Babylon. The judgment of Babylon in Revelation chapter 18. That happens, the plagues, the 7 plagues are given in Revelation 16. Then you have Babylon sitting on the beast in Revelation 17. Why is that put after the plagues? Because we know that the plagues are the final events. God puts it out of place for a reason, because he wants us to understand why certain things happen, and one of the ways he does this is by putting things in different places. We are not abusing Revelation if we do this. As a matter of fact, When you look at it and look at the sequence, you see it makes far more sense. In Revelation chapter 6, the last verse, it says, the great day of God's wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand? When the day of God's wrath has come, nobody can be sealed after that point. And yet the next chapter shows you the sealing of the 144,000. The sealing of the 144,000 does not belong at that place. God moved it to that place. It belongs under seal number 5. Things like this are kind of obvious. You can't make sense of the book unless you do something like this. So that's my answer, Sister Talia. That's why I take the I dare to say this takes place before this. It's because when you understand what is being said, it makes it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. When you don't do it this way, it makes no sense. So, you know, I understand what you're saying. I understand why you asked the question, but that is the answer I gave, and that's the best answer I can give. If it doesn't make sense, I'm going to look for a better way. And when I find a better way that makes sense, I will conclude that this is what God wanted us to understand. So that's the reason. Sister Diane, go ahead.
I was thinking if John had, even though this book is quite interesting in itself because it doesn't give us like Daniel, it's not as clear cut as Daniel, and it's all these things that just. But John is writing this on Patmos, and Rome is still in power. And you know, it's like any prison that was like a type of prison. Even in our society, they monitor and scrutinize things going out and in. So if you're trying to get a message out for God's people and you say everything plainly, what's going to happen, what would Rome have done? When they see the letter going out and they see it's like gibberish to them, you know? So they let that letter fly. He writes another one and they're saying, what is this? So they let that fly. So there's no interception that they make as a result. But if he had written it as plainly as, let's say, Daniel, even with the symbols, and then given us the exact interpretation of it, Rome, that system beast, would have done whatever it could to not let those come out.
And not only that, it was intended to be a book to test the people of God and to bring the people of God to a place, an extraordinary place. This is not for common people. This is not for even careless Christians. It's not just Rome. Careless Christians are not supposed to understand Revelation. It's a book to bring about an extraordinary result in the last days. It's to prepare God's people for the final crisis. It's the book for the 144,000. I will say it openly. Revelation is the book for the 144,000. So it's not for the common, ordinary, careless reader of the Bible. So it's not superficial. 1 + 1 makes 2, A, B, C, and so forth. There's a lot of depth, and it takes a great deal of careful study to even begin to understand. So some things are going to be totally unexpected, you know.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before when they were taking out books. This one was left because papacy said because of the symbols, nobody was going to understand it anyway. You know, that was their perception. So might as well leave it. But they was considering to taking that out as well, you know. But just the fact that they didn't because they thought it was so.
Because God overruled.
And God overruled as well.
Yeah. All right. I definitely am at the end of my rope. We're going to stop here, brothers and sisters. So we'll pick up next week with chapter 10, the opening of the little book, and we'll see where it fits and why it comes at this point. We're going to see why it comes at this point. Why does God bring it in here? But thank you all for your participation, and I trust that this is not just an academic exercise, but that we are being drawn closer to the Lord, and we are being impressed with the intricacy and the beauty and the wonder of how God puts things together. And hopefully we are being benefited.